Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge or, in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people.
Which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you. And we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara Riska, life coach, wife, and the mother of 4 incredible and unique kids. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I completely lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and grace that once felt so completely lacking. I started the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves up against what feels impossible. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle the dreams that you hold impossible now. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you're a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Welcome back to another episode of the Special Needs Mom podcast. I have an amazing episode in store for you. In fact, I just finished recording with Leah Moore. It was such an eye-opening conversation, and I thoroughly enjoyed the insight that she had and just the real life, open and honest conversation about what's working for her and what's not. Leah Moore is a high school English and theater teacher in New York who believes in the power of sharing stories. She has an amazing daughter who has Cru de Chat syndrome, which is a rare chromosomal disability, and hear that, 2 energetic twin toddler tornadoes. She believes parents need a place to empathize with one another and all that life can bring. And Leah writes to celebrate the joy found in the unexpected, yet wonderful. She has just finished her first memoir, Loving You Big, and it's about finding joy in difficult times. This isn't just a light, fluffy conversation about happiness and joy. This is a real open and honest conversation with a mom who has a ton on her plate, and I know that you're going to enjoy it. Let's get started. Leah Moore, welcome to the show. I was so excited when you reached out to me, and I'm so excited to have the listeners hear about your story, your unique journey, and what you have going on in your life. And I'd love for you to just start by telling us a little bit about your motherhood journey, especially as it relates to being a special needs mom.
So, hi, thank you for having me. I have three children, and my first daughter, Jordan, when she was born, she needed, pretty typical pregnancy, and she needed surgery when she was born initially. She had a little birth defect, something near her tush. And, we freaked out because we're new parents and we don't know the difference.
Yeah, especially with the
And
first baby.
yeah, so we were in surgery at like 3 days old and she was fine. And she spent the next 6 months just being a delicious little baby. And we were sleep deprived and did all the things that new parents do. And basically, she no longer met milestones. And to fast forward a very long story that most of us have, when she was around 18 months old, we got a diagnosis that she has a chromosomal deletion on the fifth chromosome, which is called cri-de-chat. It's French for cry of cat. And I'm happy to talk so much more about that.
Tell, I'm interested. How did that name come about? Do you know?
Yes, it was a French geneticist, scientist, and he was the first person to discover it. And a lot of the kids with cri-de-chat sound like kittens. There's a cat-like cry. And what's interesting is when she was born, I used to call it a dolphin cry. I said, look at her cute little dolphin cry. And then she was in a carrier. We were going to Texas to see my in-laws. And someone said to me, do you have a cat in there? And I said, oh, that's so funny. It's my daughter. She's got this cute little cry. But we didn't realize that it was a sign of anything. So when we got the diagnosis and looked at some of the ways that people learn about it, cat-like cry is one of the ones.
That is so interesting. How is it for you now when you look back at that, not knowing that like your innocent assumption that the cat-like cry was just her sweet cry? What is it like looking back at that now that you know what that means?
So my husband and I are both teachers, and one of the things now we think is important is to continue to educate. That it would have been pretty incredible if someone in the hospital that heard that cat-like cry knew that is a symptom of something or a sign of something, because we've met other children with cri-de-chat, and one of the most powerful moments was I was certain my daughter was upstairs with my parents. She was a baby, so there was no way she could have escaped, and I heard someone cry, and all of the mothers in the space turned at the exact same moment, and we all realized, wow, our kids all sound very, very similar. And I'm now learning that there is a very distinctive sound. So it would be nice to continue to spread awareness and educate health professionals that this is a symptom. And that's one of our new goals.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you can only know that through experience and coming together with other moms and saying, hey, same. Wow.
Yeah. And then 4 years later, we went on to have twin boys. And one of my twins also has special needs, to less severe as my daughter's, but he has excess fluid in his brain that doesn't need to ever be released. So it's just, they believe that's maybe one of the causes. So he doesn't have a diagnosis, but he's currently 5, and we're restarting the whole journey into IEPs and getting him set up for kindergarten. And then my little guy is neurotypical and navigating a world with 2 siblings with special needs.
Yeah, which is
that's my family.
Huge part of the family experience. When there's a child that has different needs than another, everybody has to, or is part of that. So your younger son, so it's your daughter's the oldest, and then you have 2 sons. And the son that has the fluid in his brain, how did you know that there was something going on for him? How did it present?
So we first learned that through neonatally. I got an MRI and took my giant belly and shoved it into a machine. And they said one of these twins has extra fluid in their brain, and when they're born, we'll figure out which one it is. So the evening that they were born, they took them immediately. They were in the NICU for a few days. And they said, we've determined it's twin A. His name is Austin.
Twin
And
A Austin. I like that. Did you do that on purpose?
no, it
Oh,
just happened,
that's
actually.
funny.
And they said, we'll set you up with the neurosurgeon immediately. And I remember my husband and I thinking, what is it like to have a baby and just spend the evening in the hospital, just like, yay, we had a baby? Because both of our
Yeah, you really
experiences.
didn't get that experience, did you?
No, and I'm not going to, because no more babies for us. So
Closed shop.
yeah.
And so you're already parenting this daughter, and then you're having twins. I can't even imagine that. What was it like for you when you learned that there may be something wrong with twin A?
That's a really great question, because we get a lot of, and I don't know how all the special needs parents listening feel, but we got a lot of, you only get what you can handle. When my daughter's diagnosis came around, like, special people deserve special children. And that didn't really work for my family. It wasn't a coping mechanism that really suited us. And then my twins were born, and it was such a miracle to have them in the first place. I mean, to make two babies at the same time. And it was both like, okay, well, we can handle this too. And come on, universe, like, throw us a break, right? Because we don't know how to navigate all these needs. And then, to make the story even more Shakespearean, we thought for a while that twin B, Oliver, had leukemia. So it just kept piling and piling and piling on. And admittedly, I know with the work you do and so many people listening, like, I just broke, because there is no way to handle all of that sorrow. There's no way to handle all of that fear. And meanwhile, we're still trying to understand how to get my daughter to walk or talk and keep our jobs. So I don't know. I don't really know how I made it through to the other side. I mean, I think the answer is I have an incredible support community in my life, my family and friends, but the last decade has thrown us every curveball.
Yeah, I can relate to kind of the question of, like, come on, like, are you kidding me? Because I won't go into the details, but we had a significant loss after, so about 5 years ago. And it was like everything we had already been through. We're like, really?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just feels like, oh my gosh, like, when is this going to end?
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you were there. And
Yes.
so you said support structure,
Mm-hmm.
but what else for you do you think allowed you to actually hold all that and continue to give in the way that you gave to your children?
I started writing, and that truthfully is, I think, what made me make it through. Because one of the things I think about a lot is not making it through doesn't seem like an option, right? As a mother, I'm like, okay, so I have unhealthy behaviors. I'm staying up too late. I'm eating too much chocolate. I'm ignoring my responsibilities. But ultimately, there are people in this home that I need to keep alive, and I can't really completely break. And I always push back on the put your oxygen mask on first concept, because I believe it and I understand it, and I even teach it to my own students. But for so long, I think I learned how to take what I call catch breaths, because I'm a singer, and you just have to sort of take a little sip of air and it's enough to keep going. And that's what I was doing for so many years. And it wasn't until I stopped to write a story to model something for my own students that I realized how much I needed to get out. Obviously, I mean, it's easier to see on the other side.
Yeah.
So I just started writing and kept writing, and just finished a book that's pouring out of all these stories, because I needed to connect to parents in a way that I wasn't able to, because I couldn't find a story like that to read myself.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I'm glad that you kind of just voiced your experience of pushing back on the whole oxygen mask first thing, because I totally get it. I think that we can look at it and say, no, like, this is not possible. And I don't know if you listen to my podcast about self-care, right? But it's like actually asking ourselves to go right beyond that, because it does feel impossible and it feels like a fact. And in some cases, yeah, it might be when, with hospitalizations. And in some cases, there certainly suggests the idea that you're just going to have to wait for some care for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, right? But I am obviously, I'm a big proponent of, well, okay, but when it's not that time, let's still ask ourselves the question of how to care for ourselves.
Right.
And so writing sounds like the thing that kind of helped you come to terms with your daughter's diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that really helped you in that process? As I'm sure there was a lot of thoughts and feelings that came up when you learned about your daughter's difference.
Yeah, so as I've mentioned a few times, I teach ninth grade English. And one of the things I've always taught was about advocating for others and giving voices to people who might not have as much voice and agency in society. And I taught about ableism. We talk about Of Mice and Men and how the character Lenny dies at the end, and all of the stereotypes about disabilities that are being portrayed in this text that John Steinbeck wrote such a long time ago. And I was teaching it with passion. And then I was in my life listening to people use the R word in my spaces and commenting on, like, a woman once said, like, ugh, she's so distracting during a dance recital. And I found myself having a really hard time speaking up in those moments and saying something. And it was almost, I was afraid to let that mama bear out, because if this is about my child, so if I'm going to let her out, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to put her back in. And I think that learning how to become an advocate is also helping me, because I grew up in a very warm, kind home. And yet there were not a lot of people with special needs in my space. They were othered. They were moved to different communities. They went to different schools. And that message is being sent of, where do you belong in society? And I internalized that. So when I got my daughter's diagnosis, like many people, I thought I could love it out of her. If I loved her hard enough and I found her enough therapies and I found all the best experts, we could definitely, quote unquote, fix her. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I realized how problematic that is for society, for all my children, for my students, for the community I live in. And once I was able to come to terms with all of that, it empowered me to have a new perspective that there's nothing wrong with my child and that she doesn't exist to teach other people kindness and empathy. She's really one of the most joyful people I've ever met, except when she's having temper tantrums. And right, like many children.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. And it's helped me to not just say that I was okay with her diagnosis, but truly begin to understand it. And she's 9 now. So it's been a very long process. And I'd argue I still have further to go because, don't we all?
Wow. That gave me chills a couple times as you were just explaining your journey of it. And so thank you for sharing.
Of course.
And yeah, it's just so beautiful the way that you really described your experience. And I also can relate to, it's like a spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, yes, you've fully accepted her and there's going to be continual, and not even just accepting, but like you fully embraced who she is as perfect.
Right.
And how long, like in the journey, like when do you feel like you got to the place where you're like, okay, like I think I'm not trying to fix her anymore?
I love that question because, so as I said, I've been writing a book for years. And about a year ago, I finished it and I started therapy because I realized writing about the book I had some things I had to work through. And my therapist very sweetly said, maybe 6 months ago, I'm not sure you've come to terms with your daughter's diagnosis. And I said, I just wrote a whole book about it. And she said, I think you might need a new chapter. And so I added that into the book, actually, because I think we need to be vulnerable and transparent about this process. So to answer your question, maybe 6 months ago, even though I thought I was, much more advanced than that, I think there was still I'm wondering if at every phase of her life, I'll have to keep pivoting a little bit because I think I came to terms with the baby version of her. And then now that she's 9, I can see all the things that she isn't able to participate in and how different her life is that didn't really hit me when she was 6. So I think that I'm probably always going to be recalibrating.
Oh,
A little bit.
recalibrating. Such a good word. And thanks for sharing so openly. And I feel like I'm in the same place where I'm constantly thinking, okay, I've got this,
Mm-hmm.
and something will happen and I'll realize, oh, I don't got this.
I don't
And
got
that's
that.
okay, right?
Right.
And here's the thing is I think it's 100% okay. And I think that if any human looked at something in their life, that would happen over and over again.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, I'm constantly trying to avoid feeling the hard feelings. I don't want to feel sad or disappointed or embarrassed or whatever the thing is. While I do intentionally go feel those feelings, it's something that I practice and I talk to basically all of my clients about it, that we're just kind of programmed to avoid those things. And so we're constantly going to be doing that. So the recalibration word, I love that word, is
It's
really,
yours.
it's like having a spirit of recalibration and having that be the thing that kind of leads us forward.
And I think it happens because there's still laundry to fold and dinner to make and friends to love and birthday cards to write. And I think that if you feel that sadness or that pain so much when it actually hits you, I almost feel like I wouldn't be able to get through the rest of my day. And so I sort of save it, hold it till everyone's asleep and in bed. And then it's, okay, well, now I can feel these feelings, which isn't the right work because then I'm not really feeling them in the real time. So it is a constant job and a struggle on top of all the other things that are a little harder or a lot harder because you have special needs in your house.
Yeah, and I think I do. It's a tricky thing because yes, in some cases, I don't necessarily want to give myself the space to completely have a breakdown in front of my kids or maybe work or whatever it is, right? Sometimes for me, it looks like I'm just going to actually wait to do that. And actually, one of my colleagues gave me the most beautiful visualizations for something like this. So in her case, she was sharing that she had a business meeting to conduct. She was leading a program and she had just learned of somebody, actually one of her client's sons passing away, right? So super heavy news. And she didn't necessarily feel like she wanted to cancel the meeting, but she had this thing, right? And so what she did, she said, you know what I did is I put that, mentally in a bubble and I let it go sit in the tree across the street. And I decided that as soon as I was done with this meeting, then I'm going to go take that bubble and I'm going to go all in. And so like you said, I think it's going to be the both and. Like sometimes we can actually feel the feeling in the moment and still go on with the laundry and the dishes and all the things or work, right? Like work doesn't stop to go feel sad. And sometimes it's going to be carving out other time so we can actually lean all the way in and not kind of have to tamper down the full extent of what's happening for us.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about you're a working mom. So you said you and your husband are both teachers. That's awesome. My husband is a teacher as well. You have 3 kids, 2 with additional needs, and you work and all the things. How do you manage all that? What's working for you in that and what's not working for you?
I actually love how you phrase that because I get a lot of like, I don't know how you do it, which well, because I have to, right? We have to eat and these kids are raising themselves.
It's not really an option. I didn't sign up for this. I'm just doing it.
So I do love what's working and what's not working. I think what's working is I love what I do. I love my job. And I won't speak for my husband, but I believe he loves his as well. And I think that, and I just wrote a piece about this actually, because in times of COVID, everything's switched around. But one of the best pieces of advice that I got was that my daughter is going to have therapist after therapist after therapist. She was a year old with 24 hours of therapy a week. It was unbelievable. And the family trainer said, you are the only mother she has. She's going to have 10 speech therapists and 15 OTs and feeding therapists, but you are her mother and that is your job. And it gave me such permission to just enjoy the snuggles and not have to work on all the strategies and all of the things. And I think I hold on to that if everyone does their job, if everyone lines up and does their job, we can get through the day. So I leave my house knowing that there's an incredible woman who's going to come here and help my kids get on the bus, because in New York, we're still going to school a little bit, or whatever time period we're talking about. I know that I'm going to go and do the best job I can do with other people's children. We're going to come back together. It's like the day is compartmentalized. And if each person can do their job to the best of their ability, the day can function. What I'm not great at is putting the job away when I get home. So it lingers into my...
Do you mean your work?
Yes, my work job goes into my home job. I think what happens is that the work part of my life feeds too much into the home part of my life. And I'm still trying to find sort of a hard stop for both of those. And I'd like to go all into both. So I still need to work on that transition so that I can be really present for my kids when I'm home. And I know that it's not working when bedtime becomes a source of pain and stress. Because then it's like, I haven't finished all the things I need to finish and I can't sit here and read to you because I have 500 things to do and I'm going to collapse. And when I can be really present at bedtime, that's how I know I've had a more successful day. I haven't had one of those in a long time, but it's possible. There might be one in the future.
I can totally imagine though what you're talking about though, because if it's like that, if you're fully present during bedtime, it can be so enjoyable, right? If you're not in a rush, if the kids are not in opposition to what you're trying to do, then the experience is so great. I experienced the same thing during, this is like years ago now, because I was bringing my kids to school and that does feel like years ago.
I know.
I was, I don't remember the details, but I remember just being so like in a tizzy. Like I was just so unpleasant generally and always rushed in the morning. And I was like, one thing I do not like is feeling rushed. And not the nicer side of me comes out when I feel rushed. So then usually nobody is happy. And I remember saying, okay, well, like you have a simple solution for this. Like maybe get yourself up a little bit early so you're not rushed. And for me, it changed the entire experience of getting my kids ready for school. All of a sudden, everybody was happy because I was being a different person because I didn't feel rushed. I love that you kind of just own up to like, basically you're not slaying this right now.
Right.
But you're working on it, right? Like you are in process. And I just really admire that. And I think it's going to probably also give us all like other places to look and noticing when we're not enjoying certain times with kids, like that could be a cue that we're not fully present for them.
Right.
Or for ourselves, because it doesn't feel good for us when we're half in and half out.
Right.
We talked a little bit about an area that's not going so awesome. I'd love to know where you feel like you're just killing it as a mom.
My children are very kind. They're nice kids. And in whatever way they're communicating, in whatever way they can move through the day, they're always clapping for other kids. They say very cute things to sort of random people, like lately, like, I like your mask, nice mask. They're just warm little people.
So who would have thought that's going to be
right.
the thing of the year? Oh, I like your mask.
I like your mask.
But I love that your kids are reaching out with that. That's so awesome.
Yeah. And I think that that's so important. Right now, the world needs some kindness, and there's a lot that I could improve upon, but they are nice children. They lead with their heart. They take care of each other. I think right now that's what matters. The happy, healthy, kind child in my world.
I think if we could all decide how our kids would behave, that would probably be it, right?
Yeah.
Or be in the world, right? If we could decide how they're going to go be in the world, I think that would be like at the top of the list for a lot of moms.
Yeah.
And how do you think how you've shown up in the world has impacted the result of your kids being kind kids? We
lead kindness with a heavy hand here. So we read the kindness stories that we talk about, and we model about kindness. I really believe in modeling and being really open with my emotions. So if I'm having a hard day and I keep saying, mommy's a person. She just needs a minute. My mommy's a
human
person
too.
Yeah. And it's funny, actually, Austin yesterday said, when I grow up, I'm going to just play video games all day and never do anything else. And I said, oh, well, also you might have to go to work. And so you have to get some sleep. And he said, but I don't want to teach children. And I thought it was so cute because in his world, the only job that exists is going off to teach children. And I think that they know their parents go and work with people to tell stories. My husband's a theater teacher. We believe in storytelling and validating people's identities and being true to who you are. And we tell those stories when we get home. So they hear all these stories of our students. And I think it's just more and more modeling and more examples. One of the things I feel really passionate about as a teacher is the concept of window and mirror texts. And so your podcast is an example of that. So people who are special needs parents are going to listen to it as a mirror text and see themselves reflected back and say, oh, yeah, that's me. I need that. But it's also really important for people who don't understand the day-to-day of being a special needs mom to listen to this and hear it as a window text to learn what it's like into somebody else's world. So I've been teaching my kids that through the stories and the texts that they see. And I think that is what's leading to their understanding and empathy and kindness.
Where did you pick up on the window and mirror thing? That's brilliant.
Thank you.
I
No, I wish. It was a study. I can send you the information. So if everyone wants it, it was a study, a practitioner of literature, and it was in a children's magazine maybe 10 years ago. And it's rooted in this idea of how we can be validated in society and see ourselves reflected, and also what damage happens if we don't see ourselves reflected.
Mm-hmm. Which is important in the conversation we've been having as a nation, obviously. Yeah,
exactly. So I can forward that article to you if you're interested.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And as you were sharing, I think there's obviously so much value in both. Mm-hmm. But even as this podcast, a lot of the moms are going to hear, oh my gosh, my son has or daughter has that diagnosis too, where you feel like, okay, I got it. Mm-hmm. But yet, because all of our stories are so unique, there's also going to be that, would it be the window experience, mm-hmm. Exactly. Right? Because nobody has it exactly the same, even with the same diagnosis. And I think that there's just so much value in being able to be in community and be in relationship with people to have experience of both. Yeah. And so I love that you pointed that out. So thank you for that. One of the things I say is that motherhood is leadership. Mm. And so I would be curious to hear how you as a mom and leader mm-hmm. want to lead your family in the next, let's just say year to 5 years. So if you could decide how you're going to lead your family or where you're going to lead your family to, mm-hmm. what comes to your mind?
So the dreamer part of me, which my first instinct was going to be to say selfish, but I'm learning that it's not selfish because it's about me and what I want, and that's not selfish.
Nice catch.
Thank you. I thought I'd be reflective for the listeners. Is I have this huge dream of my book being something that helps people on their journey to remember that they're full people and they're funny and passionate and kind and all of these things in addition to being special needs parents. And it would be a complete fantasy and dream to lead my family on sort of a tour where we're talking and sharing and teaching and sharing children's stories and just sort of advocating and leaving our stamp on all the different places that we can move through. The practical side is, I'm going to pull my children out of school for a national book tour. So I think permeating the spaces that we live in here, creating more opportunities for integration of special needs in this community. I would love to see my boys make some friends and be on teams and have a typical experience, because I think for so long they've been the siblings of Jordan. Yes. And even though Austin has his own needs, he can move through a lot of spaces that Jordan can't move through. And I would love for a day just to say, that just felt like we were every family and not a special needs family. And I do think we're getting closer to that. So I have small practical dreams and then gigantic ones.
Yeah. And I say, keep them all. And
Right.
yeah, I love your dream. Well, here's what it brought up when I heard you say that. I heard that you're leading a revolution is the dream, right? And I think when you talked earlier you mentioned something about how we used to have people that had these significant differences in institutions and very separate in society. Like I think you said you didn't have a lot of experience as a person growing up. I can relate. Or in our case, actually at our elementary school, when I was a child, we had a special center on campus, but it's where kids that had significant needs were. So they were all together, all alone. And actually we had a chance to go swim with them because I think a lot of the kids had cerebral palsy. And so, which I didn't really understand at the time. I was in 5th grade, but now I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that. And anyhow, so they were swimming in this therapeutic pool to kind of help their muscles relax a little bit. So we did have we got to interact with them, but I'm now looking back and be like, wow, that is so interesting how at that time, these kids were completely isolated from all the other experience their peers were having.
Yeah.
And I do feel like the revolution that's happening is that we're recognizing that the value for society is not just for these kids, it's for the entire community.
Yes.
And like you were pointing to earlier, it's like, and I think I have had my own revolution as far as becoming a special needs mom. I had no idea the programming that I had, the ableism, just like a lot of us didn't really understand. I mean, I don't know how your experience was, but with the conversation of race in America, I don't think a lot of us, for those of you who can't see Leah, she's Caucasian, so am I. And I don't think we were aware of what we weren't aware of. And so I think that with the conversation around ableism, honestly, I don't even think I knew that word 6 months ago. Like, I don't even think I knew it because that's how I am building this plane as we're flying it, recognizing how much I have gotten to expand from having the child that I do.
Yeah.
And I can say, if I didn't have this child, I probably wouldn't be doing this work. And so it takes people like you and I guess like me to lead the revolution.
That's right.
And to actually have a voice and to share stories and to inspire other people to expand their own knowledge.
Yeah. And I love all of that. And that's why I love that window and mirror concept, because I, as a theater and English major, and I studied it, I was delving into race work a long time ago as a white Jewish girl, but also where is my place in that work, and studying the work of Anna Devere Smith and whose story do we get to tell. And I was fortunate to be in a job that does practice that work. But like I mentioned, it's different to practice it in a professional environment than it is in a personal one. So the implicit biases that I could move through life avoiding as a white person who experienced privilege, now as a special needs mom, I am beginning to be privy to conversations that I wouldn't have been able to be a part of, and also able to be putting my nose into conversations that I'm not sure I would have been able to be a part of. Like what texts are we teaching in my school, and the way my school community divides up our town. And it gives you more agency to have those conversations. So I agree that it takes someone on the inside sometimes to say, here's what it feels like, so we can continue to spread awareness. But the movement is that it shouldn't take that personal experience to get there, that we should learn to empathize with each other, even without having to own that, I think is where we need to go, whether we're talking about gender, sexuality, race, ethnicity, poverty, abilities, whatnot. It's a huge job, but I think if we each keep taking a piece of the pie, we can make some movement.
I wholeheartedly agree. And it's just one step after another. And I think we do have a lot of work to do. I want to hear a little bit more. I know you have a blog, and then you recently started something that you're calling the Spotlight series. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and exactly what that is.
Yes. So my blog is called Loving You Big, and it it's what inspired me to write a whole book. So I actually just started writing blogs because so many parents are like, I'm going to start a blog. That's what we do, right? Especially English teachers. We love a blog.
I will say writing has been so therapeutic for me
Right?
as well.
So
I don't
good.
identify as a writer by any means. Anybody that's proofread my work can attest to that. However, I think I guess I am a writer in the sense of like
Yes.
I write.
Yes.
But anyhow, I can attest to the therapeutic value of writing.
Mm-hmm. And I just have to say, the English teacher in me would say you were absolutely a writer.
Thank you. I needed that.
To the paper. Commas don't matter. It's the ideas on the page.
I needed, actually, I'm not joking. I really think I needed that because I was one of those kids that was in like remedial English. It just, the commas thing didn't really work out so well for me.
Yeah. And they
but
don't really matter. It's not what it's about.
I agree. And that's why I'm a podcaster, not a blogger. But anyhow, I want you to keep going on the spotlight story.
Yes. So the podcast, I'm sorry. So what am I writing? Okay. So the blog started as a way to tell stories almost using humor, where normally the stories would be sad, because there's that concept that stories of disabilities have to be sad. And I'm over that. I'm not interested in that single story of disabilities. So in doing so, I started to connect with people all over the world who were also rare parents of children with rare diagnoses, and parents who are also searching for a different on-ramp other than we're just sad, right? We're sad and we want to move forward. And just recently, I started this Spotlight series because I wanted to celebrate the joy of parenting in all different types of obstacles. So one of the pieces that I just highlighted was a father who he and his partner, his husband, and then they ended up getting a divorce, but they adopted a teenage son that he's now raising. And the story is so powerful, and it teaches you that, love doesn't have to come just from birth. And there's another Spotlight series of a mom who's raising 3 boys, and just the daily ins and outs of making it through the day with these 3 children. Now, especially through COVID, there's some self-regulatory behavior issues, but just the next piece is going to highlight a mother who has a child who's transgender. There's just so many stories, and I just want to move through the world helping people to tell theirs and amplify them. And there's stories of joy that, yes, a lot of people have things happen to them. I couldn't think of anyone I know that doesn't have something major have happened to them, but it doesn't have to be defining for us. So I invite anyone who wants me to help tell their story, because sometimes people don't want to write their own or tell their own. They just answer a few questions, and then I happily write it for them. So just to spread goodness.
I love that. And if somebody was a little bit hesitant, how would you explain to them or enroll them in the idea of what the value of telling their story is?
I think there's 2 pieces. One is what we've been talking about, which is what it does for us. When we tell our stories, we feel seen, we feel validated, we feel heard. And especially telling our stories in this format where no one can interrupt us. No one can say, well, that's not entirely true, or I see it differently, right? It's just a safe space is so validating, and it's a sense of control that many special needs parents are looking for because their world is spinning in a place they didn't see spinning. And then I also think the output of it, of celebration of a child or a celebration of what you've come through and building more of a community, it just feels nice to belong. It feels nice to have someone say, I didn't know that, or I have a cousin who knew that. So I think it's working both inwardly and outwardly at the same time, and doesn't have to take very long to do it. It's like a really efficient exercise.
Yeah, I know. I love that part of it. Totally. The project manager in me loves that. And well, oh my gosh, I love that. And I'm going to go ahead and remind people that you've extended the invitation to help write their story. So if anybody wants to reach out, Leah's going to actually tell us a little bit about how to reach out to you. So tell us how to reach out to you. Then I'd love to hear any closing thoughts that you have.
Yes. So you can find me on lovingyouBig.com. And at the top of it, there's a little thing that says Spotlight Series. And if you click on that, it'll show you how to fill out all the forms. And then I'm on Instagram. I'm not great with my social media. I'm learning. So I'm on Instagram. It's also Loving You Big, as well as Twitter. And I have a Facebook, but it hasn't officially transferred over yet. But my name on that is Leah Whitman Moore. And what I always say is if you ever want to reach out and say hi, I will always write back. Because when I first became a member of this community, I scoured the internet for people's stories to connect to. And very few people wrote back, which I totally understand. But the ones that did, I felt like I got like an autograph from a movie star when I was a little kid. Like, you wrote back.
Struck gold. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Because sometimes it's just nice to say, yeah, hi, I see you, me too. And I don't claim to be an expert. I am just in the trenches like everyone else, but I am very comfortable with my discomfort and happy to keep talking about it to perhaps help other people.
Say that last part again. You're very comfortable with your discomfort.
I'm comfortable with my discomfort.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a good thought to end on.
Yeah.
Well, Leah, mother, warrior, leader, writer, revolutionary, thank you so much for the time we had together today and for taking the initiative to reach out to have this conversation. I'm 100% confident people are going to feel more connected and more part of a belonging after this podcast. And I just really want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And I love your podcast. And you are a writer. You're a storyteller. So it's important to keep sharing. But thank you for this platform to be able to share it with so many people.
My absolute pleasure. So there you have it. That's the end of our show for today. And I'm so glad you were with us. I have one quick favor to ask you. It is the request to subscribe and to share. And of course, please leave your feedback. I want to hear from you. I want to know more of what you want, more of what helped you, and of course, more of what touched you. One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes, get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.